Hey, it's us again.
We're back, the horror guys. It's Kevin.
And Brian.
And we're going to talk about some horror movies and a horror comic book.
And a horror book.
And
we got all kinds of stuff for you this time.
Got all kinds of variety.
Mega show.
And a short.
And a short, yes. A short movie in our mega show.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's see. We'll start out with... Last week we had all newish movies. This week we got...
we got a mix.
They're not ancient, but they're not new.
Yeah, none of this brand newfangled stuff.
No. Bela Lugosi, 1932.
Ooh.
You don't get much older than that.
90-year-old movie. Wow.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
White Zombie. That sounds vaguely racist, but it's not, actually.
It really didn't seem that racist.
Well,
and it was dated.
It's very dated.
A lot of all kinds of stereotypes, but I mean, as far as blatant racism, yeah, it was.
I don't know.
It was.
It took place in Haiti in the 1800s. Was that a stereotype? Were those stereotypes?
And filmed in 1932.
Oh, and then we go up to all the way up into the future, into 1970s, the Dunwich Horror, which is going to be remade.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
What's the color?
The Color Out of Space.
Yeah, the sequel of that one.
It's going to be another Nick Cage.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go to the land of animation and watch Vampire Hunter D. We don't know what happened to A, B, and C. And lastly, we will stick up with the Dust Devil. Not the Dirt Devil. That's a different thing. This is the Dust Devil. Yes.
Mm-hmm. From 1992.
Which we just had a 5-minute conversation. We couldn't remember if it happened in Africa or Australia because they were all wearing cowboy suits and walking in the desert.
It seems really Australian, but it is actually South Africa.
Yeah, well, you wear a cowboy outfit and walk through the desert, and yeah, that's 9 out of 10 times anymore. It's Australia nowadays.
It definitely had that Mad Max vibe to it.
It very much did, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then we will take a look at a book review and a graphic novel review as well. That's a little different for us, but we like new things.
Okay, graphic novel, not comic book. I apologize for calling it
It's a little thick to be a comic book.
Yeah.
As far as I know, that's really the only difference is the size.
Okay.
Size matters.
Okay.
If it's big, it's a graphic novel.
Okay.
If it's small, it's a comic.
Okay.
Just think, things that are small, you laugh at.
And it is 88
You can read
pages,
anything you
so-
want to into that.
Right.
Okay, over at HorrorBulletin.com, our weekly newsletter, we've got 3 bonus movies for you this week. We've got Idle Rumors from 1944, starring a really cool werewolf, and some other people that I'm not going to tell you about. The Last Woman on Earth, a Roger Corman film from 1960, which we both liked quite a bit.
That was actually much more entertaining than I expected going into it.
It has some really harsh reviews if you look it up.
Does,
but
yeah.
We thought it was, one of the better things we saw last weekend. And then there was The Creature from the Haunted Sea from this 1961, and we both agree that was one of the worst things we've seen in a good long time.
That was pretty awful.
Yeah. Okay, the 9th issue of Horror Bulletin Monthly is available now. Go to horrorguys.com/monthly. Or go to horrorguys.com/books and pick up many of our books that are available there now. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Did you read anything graphical this week?
I did. I read Night Cage, Volume 1.
Ooh.
Which implies there's Volume 2 coming.
There is a Volume 2 coming.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's a work in progress, and there's a Kickstarter that is set up to help fund it.
All right.
And I'm hoping that Volume 2 does come out successfully, because I liked this one a lot.
Yeah. And Volume 1 is available at Amazon, and I assume all the usual comic places, so it's easy. You can get it right now. Volume 1 is available immediately.
Uh-huh.
So what about it?
It takes place in a woman's prison.
It's by Michael Forsythe and Vincenzo Pietropalo. Published by Freedom's Hammer Productions, and it's 88 pages, and there's a link in the show notes for Amazon. So, a woman's prison.
What happens when a newly formed female vampire is sent to a woman's prison? Hilarity ensues. Okay, not hilarity, because it's not funny. It's pretty.
Well, generally, when
horror.
the sun comes up in the morning, the vampire goes poof, and that's the end of the story.
But if there's no sunlight underground.
Oh, it's an underground prison.
Yeah. It's really it's a a clever plot device to
There's
use.
a big map of the whole underground prison.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
I used to draw
Shows
maps
the
like
layout
that when
of
I
it.
was like 10. This is my secret underground base. Yeah, pretty cool though.
And they went a step further with that. Yeah. Well, it's a black and white graphic novel that does a great job setting up the story. We meet all the important characters, move right into the action. It's kind of like Orange is the New Black, only with vampire women. And surprisingly, the women in this wear a lot fewer clothes than in that TV show. And there's a real prevalence of hot physiques. The physiques are upgraded from Orange is the New Black a bit.
There's a lot less...
And they show them off.
There's a lot less old overweight women in this one than there was in Orange is the New Black.
Yep.
Yeah.
They
a lot of fewer clothes, too.
Mostly young, yeah. Well, you'd think it'd be colder in an underground prison, but yeah, they do okay. Yeah. Well, we liked it a lot. And but keep in mind, it is just volume 1, and it leaves you wanting more. But, I mean, they still managed to end it nicely. It's like, a nice chapter ending.
I'd say it's more of a setup than a full story.
Yeah. And then there's blatantly, whoop, they're going to move on to a new adventure. It's kind of like this portion ended, but yeah, really well done.
Yeah, and like Kevin said, it is a Kickstarter for Volume 2. He's already met his goal, but if you want to contribute to that, there is a link in the show notes to do that.
I bet if you contribute, there'd be a Volume 3 even, maybe.
Yeah. And we look forward to doing more graphic horror novels in the future.
Yeah, because we like them.
We just have to find some.
Uh-huh.
If you got any good suggestions.
If you're an indie who's putting something out, send it our way.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to review it. And
especially the indie stuff. If Marvel, Morbius, it's Morbin time.
Yeah.
Yeah, those kind of things are easy enough to find, but yeah, the indie stuff is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to be able to find it. So if you know some, drop us a note, email@horrorguys.com.
Yeah.
What's scarier than a zombie?
A white zombie.
Ooh. And you only had 2 choices back in 1932 in black and white land. It was either a black zombie or a white zombie.
Or gray zombies.
Yeah, you had a lot of those.
Yeah,
okay.
Monochrome zombies.
Directed by Victor Hugo Halperin. Written by Garnet Weston and William B. Seabrook. Stars Bela Lugosi, who talks just like Dracula in
his second big hit.
Yeah, wow, was this a big hit?
Back then, I think it was.
All right.
Uh-huh.
You don't see it much anymore.
It hasn't endured like Dracula has, but yeah, I think at the time it was big.
Aged like fine moldy bread.
Yeah, pretty much, I think, yeah.
Madge Bellamy and Joseph Cawthorn, hour and 7 minutes, so at least it's short. And there's a trailer in the show notes, and I'm be willing to bet you could probably find this free somewhere to watch.
Probably.
It's a pretty easy one to find. Well, this is a classic slow zombie movie. The slow kind of movie. Slow kind of zombie, not slow kind of movie.
Yeah.
And a sinister-looking Bela Lugosi makes a winning combination. It's a little slow and tame by today's standards. This is The Sadness.
No.
But it was groundbreaking at the time, and it is an interesting watch seeing how things were done 90 years ago.
90 years ago.
That's a long time ago. So what happens? Spoil it for us, for those who haven't seen it in the past 90 years.
Well, in the West Indies, a carriage containing a young couple, Neil and Madeline, rides down the road and comes across a bunch of black people digging a grave in the middle of the road. These are local natives who are afraid of somebody who's been stealing corpses, so they've been burying people in the middle of the road, where there's always traffic and activity.
Well,
which
I
is
guess that works,
kind of smart, but kind of blasphemous too. I mean,
you go to lay graves
driving over the graves all day, but they couldn't get grave robbed that way.
Yeah, it's always somebody passing over.
It's actually kind of a clever idea. Yeah,
unless you get stuck in a pothole and see somebody looking up at you.
Ooh.
Ew.
Well, they drive on and soon meet Murder Legendre,
whose name is never actually mentioned. He's just that man. But you look him up. His name is Legendary or something, and his nickname is Murder. They do mention a man named Murder at some point, but at no point do we actually find out that it's really Bela Lugosi. But that's him.
And he's creepy. Yeah. The driver sees zombies coming out of the woods and rides away. Legendre is left holding Madeline's scarf. He smiles and leads the zombies away. The carriage driver explains the zombies to the couple. They're the Walking Dead, and they're following them to the Beaumont house right now.
Oh, another note. This character, Murder Legendre, or whatever.
Yeah.
It looks like it's legendary to make him more mysterious, but really that's just Haitian or French for brother-in-law.
Oh.
He's somebody's brother-in-law.
Yeah, okay.
He's not legendary. It's not like a tricky name. It's just, that's just what they call him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, Dr. Brunner meets up with the couple at the Beaumont house and says zombies are a common enough thing in Haiti. Just, every street corner, I guess.
It's Tuesday, there's zombies.
It's just an accepted fact, yeah. Well, Brunner has been sent to perform a wedding ceremony for Neil and Madeline, but he doesn't know why. It's not like the old man Beaumont to be so generous.
And they describe him as Old Man Beaumont, and he's like 30.
Well, it was a different time. Well, the butler talks to Beaumont, and we see that he is indeed up to something. He's working with that man, Legendre. And the butler is afraid of him. I'd sacrifice everything in the world for her, he explains. Does he mean Madeline?
Well, that's the only her we've seen so far.
Yeah. Well, a carriage driven by a zombie, they're very skillful, actually, when they're, properly trained, I guess. They can do stuff. Comes for Beaumont, and he takes the driver to the sugar mill, which is staffed by the living dead. Beaumont walks through the operation. No one speaks to him until he comes to Legendre, the man in charge. They work faithfully. They do not mind working for long hours, he explains. Legendre gives Beaumont the scarf, Madeline's scarf, and he knows what they want. All Beaumont wants is a month to seduce Madeline, but Legendre says he couldn't do it in a year. There is a way, but the cost is high, Legendre states. Beaumont says he'll pay anything, so he's a little obsessed with Madeline here.
A little bit.
Yeah. Legendre gives Beaumont a vial of something to feed Neil, and that'll solve his problems. Send me word when you use it, he commands. And back at the big house, everyone's ready for the wedding. Beaumont tries to convince Madeline not to go through with the wedding, but she's not listening. He gives her a rose, and she sniffs it. Outside, Legendre does a spell with a candle and the scarf, and inside, Madeline drops dead.
Oh, that vial wasn't for Neil.
Oh.
It was. I thought it was poison or something to kill Neil and get him out of the way, and he would be the zombie.
That's what I thought, too.
No.
So, they have a funeral, and Neil goes to the bar to drink heavily. He hallucinates, seeing Madeline in his drink, and then freaks out. Legendre introduces Beaumont to his favorite zombies in the graveyard, all of whom used to be his enemies. What if they regain their souls, he asks. Legendre says that can never be. So the zombies pick up Madeline's coffin, take it home to Beaumont's place. Inside, they hear a drunken Neil running around screaming her name. He shows up in the tomb and finds it empty.
Yeah, he gets to the tomb, which is the door standing wide open and unlocked, and he goes inside and sees that it's empty. And the bad guys had heard him out there screaming her name. They knew he was coming. Why didn't they lock the door?
They don't care. They didn't care.
All right, all right.
But it would have,
bought him some time.
Bought him some time, yeah. Well, Dr. Brunner comes clean, tells Neil his suspicions. He thinks that Madeline may actually still be alive. He says that zombies aren't really dead. They just have no mind or soul. He reads from a book about lethargic comas. Beaumont wouldn't have been able to do this, so it must have been the natives. Or Legendre.
There clearly is a magical component to it, because she didn't fall over until he did his little spell thing out in the yard.
Yeah, it's not just a chemical.
Yeah.
Well, elsewhere, Madeline is up and about. Plays the piano for Beaumont. She plays pretty well for a dead girl. So these zombies are, can be trained to do stuff, but they're not really, they don't seem to have a mind, really.
I wonder if she could play before she died.
Oh.
Yeah, probably could.
Yeah. Well, he puts an expensive looking necklace on her. She doesn't even notice. He sees that she's just brain dead, soulless, a zombie, and regrets what he did. He can't bear to look at her anymore. Now that he's got her,
Not what he had signed
Except
up for.
she's not what she was, so yeah. Well, Beaumont wants Legendre to give her back her soul, but he says that's impossible. Legendre gives the drug to Beaumont so that he can take Madeline from him. And the zombies take away Silver the butler. Poor Silver. Neil and Brunner go looking for Pierre, an old witch doctor. Pierre wants them to turn back before it's too late. Pierre says he's the only man who ever came back from being a zombie. The pair head to Legendre's castle, where inside Legendre gloats over his control of Beaumont. Neil staggers in and sees them, but he passes out before he can say anything. Legendre controls Madeline, who picks up the knife and walks over to Neil. She drops the knife, comes back down the stairs as Neil wakes up and embraces her. Legendre calls in his zombie crew, but Dr. Brunner sneaks up and whacks Legendre over the head. And the spell's broken. One by one, the zombies all jump off the cliff, preferring suicide to following Legendre's orders.
You think Legendre never had to go to sleep or anything? Apparently, once he goes unconscious, the zombies are free.
Yeah.
Don't think too hard.
Don't think too hard on that. Yeah. Neil goes to Madeline and she wakes up. Legendre wakes up and makes his escape, at least until Beaumont grabs him from behind and they both will go off the cliff as well. Legendre's pet vulture will eat well in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this had, what I guess you'd call them the real semi-historical Haitian-style zombies, not the plague-ridden, flesh-eating monstrosities of Romero on The Walking Dead. We just don't get enough real zombies.
There's no brain eating in this one.
There's no brain, yeah. And the closest one I can think of, zombie-wise, to this is that one Hammer movie. What was that called, where they were all sort of bluish-looking in the tin mines?
Yeah, I know the one you mean, but
yeah.
I can't think of the name of it either.
I can't either right now. I should look it up in the Horror Guy's Guide to the Hammer horror films, because it's in there. Yeah, but, the classic dead people's, not quite really dead people, slave kind of zombies.
Used as workers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, why would Madeline and Neil go to Beaumont's house, knowing full well that he had a crush on her and would do anything to win her over? What kind of stupid judgment is that? Well, Bela Lugosi looks suitably evil here, and he glares at the camera a lot. He's got that look.
And he's got a magic hand symbol that he does, too, when he's really concentrating. Yes.
To focus his power.
Yes.
There are some other actors here, too, but they aren't particularly subtle or noteworthy. You watch this one for Lugosi. There's no other reason. It's decent enough and probably very original at the time, but it's probably a little slow-paced for the modern viewer.
Yeah, pretty much.
Who's your favorite vampire hunter?
Vampire D.
Vampire Hunter D.
Vampire Hunter D.
From 1985. Directed by Toyo Ishida. Written by Hideyuki Kikuchi and Yasushi Hirano. Stars Kanedo Shiozawa, Michito Mizawa, and Seizo Kato. Hour and 20 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. And they made like 17 different sequels to this, not to mention however many video games. It's a cartoon.
It's a cartoon.
It's an anime, yes.
It sure is a cartoon.
Kevin doesn't go for the cartoons.
I do sometimes. I didn't this one. This one didn't do much for me.
This is kind of old school. Some of the newer ones, like The Empire of Corpses, had some really good ideas in it.
This just didn't have enough interesting and original things, probably because it was so groundbreaking at the time. And the stuff, I've seen I don't know, it just didn't impress me.
It's a vampire story done in anime.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the stranger comes to town, he battles the evil overlord and moves on. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm not sure why I guess it was just the timing of it, why this one was considered groundbreaking and great.
I think so.
It's not that impressive, I didn't think.
Well, they put a lot of work into it.
Well, you could say that for any anime.
Yeah.
Well, this story takes place in the distant future, where mutants and demons slither through a world of darkness, we're told. They slither through a world of darkness.
Slither. Okay.
A woman walks through the countryside carrying a big gun. She's hunting some kind of dinosaur-like creature, and the thing kills her horse, but then she uses her electro whip to stun it and then blasts it with her laser gun. A werewolf attacks, but runs off after pulling the cross off her neck. She then sees one of the nobles, a red-eyed man. She shoots him as well, but he ignores that. He buries his fangs. He's a vampire, and credits roll. All right, so we got this high-tech alien world with vampires and werewolves.
So it's science fiction and horror combined.
The far future.
Or the distant past.
No, it's future.
Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
A man rides in on a cyborg horse. The girl we saw before is waiting for him on the road. You're a professional hunter, aren't you? She uses her whip on him, but he breaks the whip and rides on. She begs him for help, so he checks out her neck under the collar and asks her name. She's Doris, a fine Japanese name.
Hi, Doris.
She takes him home, and we meet her brother, Dan.
Another fine Japanese name.
Yeah. The mayor's son, Greco, wants to know what happened to Doris after she was nibbled on by the Count. He hits on her, but she hits back. He then tells the whole town that Doris was bitten by a vampire, which is why she hired the hunter. The sheriff wants to take Doris to the camp. The doctor disagrees, but the law is the law. This is one of those places where everyone knows there's vampires. The last time this happened, 50 years ago, the Count ended up killing 30 people. The townspeople start avoiding Doris. So this is some sort of cyclical thing.
It's going to happen again.
The hunter's talking hand taunts him. It says he's falling in love with Doris. His name is D, just the letter D. Count Magnus Lee is the vampire who attacked Doris, and she explains what happened. He might be as much as 10,000 years old.
And talk about the talking hand. It took a little bit of time to figure out that that's who he was conversing with.
I thought it was his sword at first.
Yeah, but literally his hand has a face, and it's alive on its
little
own.
mouth and eyes,
Yeah.
Tell it to the hand, and the hand will tell you
Talk
back.
to the hand.
The mutants and werewolves approach the house at night. The Count's daughter, Lamica, threatens Dee, and her helper, Ray, attacks. Dee stabs Ray, but the blade goes right through him. Ray can warp space. Dee's wounds heal, so Lamica gives it a try too, but he sends them both packing. Dee uses his, I don't know if it was a flying ability or a super jump, because anime, it's hard to tell sometimes.
I think it was more of a jump.
Yeah. He enters the Count's castle, which is filled with all kinds of weird bugs and monsters, and his hand warns him that it's a trap, but he knows that. He fights off a ghostly werewolf and several other creatures. He wanders through ruins from the Great Wars 10,000 years ago, and he finds 3 snake sisters, or lamias, who plan to sap his life essence. Meanwhile, Ray and a band of demons come for Doris, Dan, and the Doctor, the 3 Ds. They easily capture her and take her to Count Lee, who plans to marry her tomorrow. Doris sees Dee, who is being drained by the sisters. The Count reveals that Dee is a half-breed mix of human and vampire. On the other hand, Dee has so much life force that he overwhelms and eats the sisters.
That was a pretty cool scene.
Oh, you have a compliment.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
You didn't hate it entirely.
I didn't hate it entirely, no.
Lamica looks in on the sleeping Doris and doesn't approve. She tries to stab Doris in her sleep, but Dee comes in and steals Doris away just in time, killing several more demons on the way out, and he takes Doris home. Meanwhile, back in town, Greco listens in on Ray talking to some demons about the time-bewitching incense. Dan is kidnapped, and they want Dee to turn himself into the nobility. Dee fights Ray and cuts off his hand. The incense doesn't work.
Uh-oh.
The Doctor knows of a safe place where vampires can't enter, so he and Doris go there, but he's ambushed by Lamica, and the Doctor isn't what he appeared to be. Lamica then kills the Doctor, but passes out when Greco shows up with a time-bewitching incense, which he stole from Ray.
And
a little switcheroo.
His does work. He's got the real stuff.
He plans to use the kidnapped Lamica to lure in the Count. Dee and Dan show up to get rid of Greco, who is soon captured by Ray. Doris offers Dee her blood, but he resists. Ray shows up, this time with the real incense, and he uses it against Dee. Ray then stabs Dee and cuts off his hand. The Count doesn't give Ray the reward he was hoping for. What is with these eternal vampire overlords not paying off their Renfields the way they want?
Yeah.
It never goes well.
What's wrong with them?
A deal's a deal.
You'd think so.
Count Lee tells Lamica some uncomfortable truths. Her own mother was human. He puts her into stasis until the wedding is over. Dee's dismembered hand crawls back and reconnects to the body, and Dee finally wakes back up.
His hand has a life of its own.
I'm thinking Doctor Who at this point connection. Somebody stole something from somewhere. The hand. Count Lee and Doris are getting ready for the wedding. Ray interrupts, using incense to, nothing, because it doesn't work. The Count kills Ray. Dee shows up to kill the Count, but of course it's not that easy. Dee and Count Lee fight. It turns out Dee is more than meets the eye, stabbing Lee right through the heart, which only wounds him. He's old.
Really, really old.
The Count recognizes Dee as their long-lost original ancestor from 10,000 years ago. Lee dies, and Lamika volunteers to die as well. Doris, Dan, and Dee watch from safety as the evil castle sinks into the ground, Usher style.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Dee rides off into the wilderness as Doris and Dan wave goodbye.
Because all good castles have a self-destruct. You know.
Well, they seem to. A lot of them do.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's not just your strange vampire hunter from down the road. He's the original vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are so many monsters and creatures, you have to wonder how this town has been untouched for the last 30 years. How are there any people left at all?
Walking a fine line here.
Monsters gotta eat. For the viewer, the wide assortment of creatures and monsters is interesting. Several of the demons bear more than a passing resemblance to some of the villains in Ninja Scroll, which came out long after this. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
Like the guy with the bees in his back?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
The big stone man.
Uh-huh.
Several of the villains from Ninja Scroll.
Okay.
I don't know if it was the same people worked on it, but they certainly looked influenced.
Yeah, there were similarities.
Well, this is the year 12,000 plus, but there's a surprising lack of technology in the world. They have robot horses and electro whips, but not much else. Didn't see any computers, no robots, no spaceships, just, a couple of hand weapons.
It's almost like the technology is so advanced they don't need to use it anymore.
Oh, look at you. They're nanotech vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, it's very fast moving, but Dee doesn't really have any disadvantages. He just moves from one situation to the next, killing everything in front of him. Nothing challenges this overpowered hero. It's an interesting world, and I'd like to know more, but I really just wasn't that impressed with this one today. It was super influential back in the day, so maybe I've just seen too much stuff that was cribbed from this, but it didn't do much for me.
No, me neither. Even less for me, I think.
I mean, if you played the video games or you want to get into the whole series of Vampire Hunter D stuff, you got to start here.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. And then we saw a brand new short film called Terrible Things.
We've seen terrible things,
Mm-hmm.
and we're here to tell you about it.
Directed and written by Syrian, you think? Syrian Hickey?
Works for me.
Okay. And stars Claire J. Loy. Runtime is 9 hours. Yeah, 9 hours.
9 hours, and we call it a
that'd
short.
Be a short. 9 minutes, 54 seconds. And it's a link to the YouTube, actually, too. You can watch it for free. The synopsis. We watch someone in a gas mask and a contamination suit wandering through a cloudy wasteland as they find a lonely grave. And they go inside a house and look around. There's a mummified body, a note, and some pills. That evening, she takes the suit off, makes a fire, and has a one-sided conversation with the body. And then she goes outside.
Yeah.
Well, nothing here is explained, yet you know exactly what happened. It's apocalyptic. And it's an atmospheric, moody, desolate world, and her talk just worsens it. It's not a happy
It's a downer.
movie. It's a downer, yes, to say the least, yeah. This could easily have been a segment of a full-length film, but this is what we get, and it's really good. And the creature at the end is fine, but the star of the film is really the dread, the overwhelming dread. And she's, one person doing this, and she does a really nice job with it.
Terrible things have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we don't know the specifics.
So it's very nice, but yeah, not a happy film, but it's a good one.
Which takes us to our H.P. Lovecraft story of the week. Say that like we do it every week. The Dunwich Horror from 1970.
Tentacles and colors and scary things.
Not so much in this one. Just a little bit at the end.
Yeah.
Directed by Daniel Haller, written by Curtis Hanson, Henry Rosenbaum, and Reinhold Silkowski. Stars Sandra Dee, Dean Stockwell, and Ed Begley. Egg Bedley, yeah.
Egg Bedley.
Need more actors named Egg. Ed Begley. And there's a trailer in the show notes.
Runtime is 1 hour and 30 minutes. A nice even number.
Spoiler free, what happens?
Spoiler free, stuff happens. Oh, that poster. Yeah, I forgot how cool the poster was on this one and how subjective it is. Suggestive? What's the word I'm looking for?
Suggestive, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, should check out the poster. It's an okay telling of a Lovecraft tale. Awesome house and settings. Good acting. It's decent, though it's kind of a talky adaptation and watchable, but overall, kind of middling.
Yeah, the budget on this was far lower than it should have been.
I'd give it, a solid 6, 7. I liked it more than I disliked it.
Yeah, me too.
But it's not great.
It looks good. It's well filmed and
yeah.
very colorful. The soundtrack is good.
And I thought Dean Stockwell pulled off that character really well.
Yeah, he was fine.
Subtly creepy, and
It's just
kind of meh.
Yeah, not much happens.
Bland.
There's some action there at the end.
Yeah.
It's a lot more suspense than anything.
Yeah.
Well, spoiler-wise, a woman moans in pain, surrounded by strange old people and mystical symbols. There's one of them on her forehead. Some very cool animated credits roll. And I like the theme song.
Yeah.
But then they murdered it. Dr. Armitage hands over the Necronomicon to Nancy Wagner, one of his students. Wilbur Whatley walks up and asks her if he can take a look at the book. At first she refuses, but she looks into his eyes and then gives it over to him. And this is a priceless antique.
But he's got that kind of charm.
Wilbur reads the book, and it's about how to release the old ones. Armitage comes over and confronts Wilbur, and when he finds out who he is, he wants to get together in Dunwich. Oh, you're that Wilbur Whatley.
Let's have a sandwich in Dunwich.
Wow. It's a manwich. Manwich sandwich in Dunwich, yes. Armitage refuses to allow Wilbur to borrow the priceless book, but Wilbur decides to get close to Nancy instead. He misses his bus home, so Nancy volunteers to drive him to Dunwich. He invites her inside, and it's a really cool old house. He's nice enough and normal looking, but he's also just slightly off. He's a little creepy.
Mm-hmm.
While Nancy goes to the bathroom, he runs outside and sabotages her car. Nancy gets a jump scare from Old Man Whatley, Wilbur's grandfather. When Nancy's car doesn't work, she stays in the guest room and has weird nightmares about tribal rituals and sacrifices. Elizabeth talks to Dr. Armitage about Nancy, who didn't come home last night. They drive up to see if everything's all right, and they get shooed off with the assurances that she's fine, but the old doctor is concerned. Armitage knows all about their family history. Meanwhile, Armitage does more research on the Whatley family. He looks up Wilbur's parents and the doctor who assisted in Wilbur's birth.
Which isn't that kind of a weird thing to look up? And the doctor,
Do you know what doctor delivered you?
And why is it relevant?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out it is relevant, but why would that normally be?
I'm sure at some point I was told who the doctor's name who delivered me, but I couldn't tell you, and I don't care.
Oh, the doctor who did me was the family physician for many years afterwards, too.
Just a general practitioner type?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
No obstetrician?
I don't believe so. No. I think it was just that guy, so far as I know.
That explains a lot about you. You weren't even born right. Wow. Okay, anyway, Wilbur tells Nancy all about his father, who was hanged by an angry mob who caught him doing some kind of ritual they didn't approve of. Armitage goes to see Dr. Corey, who helped every baby in town being born. Well, I guess that's not that freaky if he's the only doctor in town.
Yeah, I mean, and my town had more than one doctor, but I long ago, that's just how it was. There wasn't generally a specialist obstetrician. It was the family doctor.
The midwives.
The midwives would help too, but the town doctor would be the doctor.
Yeah.
For everything.
Well, Elizabeth talks to Nurse Corey, who is much younger than the doctor, and it's not really clear if that's his daughter, his wife, or just a coincidence. But Nurse Corey explains some of the bad stories about Weird Wilbur and the old Whatley house. Armitage warns Corey about the Necronomicon and the thought that he might believe in that kind of silly old magic. We flash back to the pre-credit sequence, which was the birth of Wilbur.
Oh, that's what was happening.
There were twins, and one of them was supposed to have died, but Corey never saw the body. The mother, Lavinia, lost her mind and still lives in the local mental hospital.
Uh-huh.
Nancy and Wilbur have a picnic, and she's wobbly on her feet afterwards. You don't think he drugged her?
No.
Well, he takes her up the mountain to an old isolated altar atop a cliff. It's called The Devil's Hop Yard, and it's obvious that he has some kind of hypnotic influence over her. He wants to bring Yog-Sothoth and other old ones back into the world. The two then have hallucinogenic sex, I think. I think that's what they did on the altar.
I think that's what was implied.
The hallucinogenic there was maybe a little excessive. Elizabeth comes back in a panic to get Nancy and knocks old Grandpa down. She goes upstairs and opens the ominous locked door that we were told to never open.
Uh-oh.
Things get positively colorful as the tentacles and flashing colors attack her from within. What kind of colors are these?
Psychedelic.
Yeah. I'm thinking the colors out of space again. The old man says that Wilbur will fail, but Wilbur says he can do it. The old man then falls down the stairs to his death.
Yeah, these aren't the colors out of space. These are the colors from Earth.
Lovecraft, he liked his colors.
Yeah, colors are scary.
Nancy stands next to Wilbur at the funeral as he does another ritual over the old man's open grave. A bunch of the local people charge in and put a stop to the non-Christian burial. There's no death certificate, so the sheriff impounds the old man's body.
Which is kind of a weird thing to do.
Puts it in the evidence locker somewhere and forgets about it.
Yeah.
Later that night, Wilbur breaks into the library and steals the Necronomicon, killing a security guard in the process. It's all fun and games.
Mm-hmm. So he's not really a good guy.
Armitage and Corey go to see Lavinia, who is dying. She's quoting something from the Necronomicon, so Armitage rushes to the library. Meanwhile, Wilbur is wearing his dark cloak and has prepared the ritual to sacrifice Nancy and release the old ones. Something gets out of that upstairs bedroom and starts terrorizing the neighbors and mutilating the bodies. The locals do the "let's go get 'em" routine.
And I think this was about the point where when I realized, oh, that's the brother. The brother who didn't die? The twin brother.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, is the tentacle creature.
And the poster, the movie poster even mentioned that there's twin brothers. And
I didn't.
It was so downplayed that I didn't even realize they were related till a little later.
Yeah.
Later than this even.
No, this was about the point. But yeah, I didn't look at the poster ahead of time. The poster does spoil that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Armitage tells him not to kill Wilbur as he's the only one who might be able to stop the monster. The monster then kills Nurse Corey. The police arrive at the Dunwich house, which is in the process of burning to the ground. That self-destruct again.
Yep.
They can hear the monster in the woods, which seems to be invisible. The invisible monster of many colors kills several of the hunters in the woods. Armitage arrives at the altar, and Wilbur says magic words and shows his power. The two men have a battle of powers, and things go really badly, really fast for Wilbur. We get a very brief view of Yog-Sothoth as he fades from reality. That's a hard one to say. Yog-Sothoth.
Earth is saved again for now.
Armitage explains that the monster, who is Wilbur's twin, took after his father, and the father was not of this earth. He was Yog-Sothoth.
Ooh.
Then we get a shot of the baby inside of Nancy that we didn't know about until just now.
Oh, what's that baby going to be like? Maybe it'll be twins.
Yog-2.
Congratulations,
Sothoth.
Nancy. You're having twins.
I really liked the music during the opening credits. But then they repeated that same 10-note theme about every 10 seconds throughout the film, and it got old really fast.
Okay, it was a little bit overdone.
It's like they could only pay the composer for 2 minutes of music, and they really made it stretch.
Yeah, they did.
Other than a couple of weird false color negative images, there aren't really any special effects here to speak of, but the story could have used some. There's way too much evil talking and not enough evil doing.
Yeah, exactly.
The acting is mediocre at best, with Dean Stockwell trying really hard to look menacing. He's just a little guy.
Yeah, but I thought
he's a little
he pulled
guy.
it off, yeah.
He's not bad looking. He's got this funky curly afro hair and his little squiggly mustache. He just doesn't look evil.
Well, I think that helped, though, because, he's just this guy, and kind of trapped in this situation. He's just a normal person. Born into this, thing, and he's trying to play this role the best he can. But yeah, he's just a little ordinary person.
Okay.
I don't know. I thought he pulled it off nicely.
He's no Christopher Lee.
No.
And Sandra Dee was here also trying to revive her failing career. Neither were particularly successful. Yeah, she did all those teenager, beach movies or whatever, and then she started getting old. And she's only in her upper 20s here, so she's not old.
But she's
too old for that kind of role anymore.
Yeah, she's not,
Yeah. It's a nice attempt at an H.P. Lovecraft story, but the budget and effects just weren't there. This really could use a remake, and we're going to get one according to Hollywood rumors. It will be the sequel to 2020's The Color Out of Space, and Nick Cage is somehow involved with that one. This movie here is not so great, but if you're a Lovecraft fan, then, well, yeah, you got to see it.
And I'm looking forward to that take on it, because I really liked The Color Out of Space, Nick Cage's take on that. Well, it wasn't his take.
He did get all cagey there at the end.
He was the main actor, but yeah.
I suppose he would play Wilbur.
Probably, would be my guess.
Yeah. What's the one where he plays Dracula, the Renfield? When's that supposed to come out?
Oh, they're working on it.
Still in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Someday, yeah.
All right, well, let's see. And next up, we have Dustbuster.
Dust Devil.
Oh.
Dirt Devil. No, the movie is called Dust Devil from 1992. And this was the final cut.
Apparently, there's a lot of different versions of this out there.
Mm-hmm. There was some fuss and problems in production and director versus producers and, studio and, So, yeah, this is the final cut.
The one we're talking about is called The Final Cut. Written and directed by Richard Stanley, stars Robert John Burke, Chelsea Field, and Zakes Mokai. 1 hour, 27 minutes. Spoiler free. It's a beautiful and atmospheric film. We watched the version called The Final Cut that had additional footage. And I'm wondering if that additional footage might not have been why we thought it was so slow. Possibly. It's a slow-moving film that requires patience, but it's worth a watch.
And is that runtime right? 1 hour, 27 minutes? I thought it was longer than that.
I sure thought it felt like it was 6 hours long.
Okay, yeah.
No, it's right.
Okay.
It felt long, though.
Well, it starts out, we get a voiceover explaining a legend about how a man became able to fly and then became a hunter. He is the Dust Devil. A man walking down the street, desert road, lays down in the middle of the road to listen. Something's coming and he can hear it. Well, a car stops, and inside is a woman who picks him up and takes him home. That evening, the two have sweaty sex in the way that only you can in the deserts of Africa. He snaps her neck halfway through the act.
You're not supposed to do that.
Oh. Elsewhere, Ben Macabre gets a strange phone call. He's a local cop. Back in the desert, the Dust Devil does some kind of strange ritual, paints her house with weird art, all painted in blood and dust. He packs her fingers in ice, burns down her house, and steals her car.
As one does.
Wow, heck of a date. Yeah. Back in civilization, Wendy Robinson breaks up with her husband Mark. Ben is a policeman, and he gets a call to check out the burning farmhouse as it might be a murder. The house isn't completely destroyed, and he looks at the strange paintings. They find the missing car deserted, and he investigates that as well. Both the Dust Devil and Wendy make their way separately to the dying little town of Bethany. Ben talks to the medical examiner about the case. She says it looks like some kind of witchcraft, but neither of them believe in magic, but clearly the perpetrator does. Wendy continues driving through the desert, finally stops to pick up Mr. Dust Devil, and they talk about the afterlife.
And this guy never gets a name, so we just call him the Dust Devil.
Mm-hmm. The guy, yeah. Ben chews out some underlings about torturing a witness, and the captain backs up Ben. The captain says the UN wants to take over jurisdiction of this case, so Ben is off the case as of tomorrow. The captain has records of similar murders going back to the early 1900s, hands those over to Ben. Crazy old Joe tries to explain the magic to Ben, but Ben's not a believer. Joe says the evil one has come to the dying town to gather souls, but until he's finished his job, he's trapped in human form. Joe explains a way to stop the creature, strip him of his powers, by binding him with a magic stick.
Yeah, and going back there a little bit.
Gives that to Ben.
The captain says the UN wants to take over jurisdiction of the case.
Mm-hmm.
That must be an African, European kind of thing.
A South African thing.
When was the last time here in the United States you heard of the UN doing anything?
Yeah, stepping in to solve a crime.
Yeah, the great crime fighters of the UN.
Uh-huh, you just don't.
You think that's just totally fictional, or do they do that in, like, these little countries?
I don't know.
South Africa is not a little country,
country.
This was, I don't know what year this takes place. They're clearly not very technological at this point.
I think it was like, is a 1992 movie. I think it was taking place right around then.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know for sure.
You just don't get a lot of stories about the UN crime fighting team.
No.
And that's not what this one's about either.
So it appears to Ben that, like, this is a serial killer, but it's been like 90 years that this has been going on. So something ain't right.
Is this Jeepers Creepers? No, that's 33 years.
No. Yeah. Well, Wendy decides they've been driving in circles, stops next to a huge cliff. She kisses the hitchhiker, and later they dance. We see that husband Mark is in his car trying to find Wendy. He gets beat up at a bar at the same moment Wendy and the stranger have sex. The stranger doesn't kill Wendy, but instead bears his soul to her. And, gives a little bit of insight about what he is, who he is. Wendy finds the stranger's weird Polaroid photo collection and also his box of fingers. He swears that those people wanted to die. They came to him. And he gets ready to stab her. She knocks him out and drives away. And she gets run off the road and runs away on foot.
And you kind of wonder at this point, is he just a serial killer, or is he really, helping out these suicidal people? They want to die and just can't do it, so he takes care of it for them. He's like the supernatural fulfillment guy.
Yeah, kind of.
We know what you really want. We'll give it to you.
Yeah, I think that's what he is. And he's harvesting. Well, like the voiceover said, and the Crazy Joe said. He's. And I thought that the things that he does along the way kind of give that impression too. He's trapped in a human body.
Yeah, he doesn't really want to be doing it.
Yeah, he doesn't really want to be doing it. It's kind of interesting to him, the sensations of, being, the way he eats and the way he showers, and, like he's experiencing these sensations distantly or something. It's very strange how he, I thought it was interesting. Yeah. Well, Ben comes to Mark, who is now in jail for getting beat up so many times. They pick up the trail and continue the search for Wendy. Doesn't take long before Mark turns on Ben, who has the upper hand and leaves Mark handcuffed to a car in the dust storm. Well, the stranger finds Wendy first, and she's attacked by a windstorm in the desert. The next morning, she finds a small village in the desert, but it's abandoned except for Ben.
Now, here's one we noticed at the time.
Yeah.
She spent all day yesterday walking through the desert, drenched in sweat, soaking wet. Then she lays down in the dirt during a snowstorm.
Windstorm.
Yeah, not snowstorm. Yeah,
Sandstorm.
desert sandstorm.
Yeah. Right.
And wakes up in the morning.
How clean she is. Yeah, she's not very
no,
gritty
you'd be
at
a
all.
walking cake of filth at that point.
Oh, so gritty. Yeah. Well, they hear a phone inside one of the buildings. Ben gives her his gun. Ben answers the phone, and it's his dead wife calling him. Creepy. Ben continues on, finds himself in an abandoned movie theater that isn't completely abandoned. The still nameless bad dude stabs Ben rather thoroughly. Wendy points Ben's gun at the stranger, but it doesn't work. Uh-oh. And then Ben drops his magic stick in front of the stranger, which binds him until Wendy graphically blows his head apart with a shotgun.
And this magic stick was explained earlier.
Yeah, it was.
Crazy Joe gave it to him.
Yeah. Ben and the magical stranger both die, leaving Wendy in the desert all alone. Well, Wendy walks through the desert until she comes across Mark, still cuffed to the car. She points the gun at him, but then turns around and continues on through the desert, just leaving him there. And
should have left him a quart of motor oil.
Wendy walks along the desert road, and then she gets on the ground and puts her ear to the road, listening. There's somebody coming.
There's a new dust devil in town.
Yeah, I think that was the implication, that the spirit has a new host body.
Yep.
Yeah.
Round 2. Or round whatever.
Round
we
whatever,
don't know.
since, hundreds of years, yeah.
Well, the voiceover narration is poetic, but doesn't really mean much other than to set the mood. The visuals are really cool. If you want to see life in 1990s South Africa, then this is your film. And again, we thought it was Australia for a good while. There's a lot of current events going on in the background news, and it looks like it's probably not a good place to be. It's a different flavor of folk horror, but it definitely qualifies as that genre. Sometimes the stranger seems like he wants to kill Wendy, and at other times he appears to want to help her. He's an inexplicable force of nature. We get a few creature shots of the thing when it doesn't look quite human, but they are very brief flashes. Other than that, there's not much in the way of monster special effects that are noticeable. There are some good gore effects here, though. There's a lot of really nice visual imagery and cinematography here, but it's definitely style over substance in a lot of cases. The story plods along between the cool bits of scenery. It's slow, it's atmospheric, it's just plain weird. Some would call it boring. Still, if you've got patience, it's really an unusual film.
And it's one that I've seen twice and wouldn't mind seeing again.
All right.
Yeah, it's one that I like that much.
I didn't hate it, but I am in no hurry to see it again. All right. And then something a little different. I read a book.
A book?
Criminal Macabre, the complete Cal McDonald stories, 2nd edition. And this is a book by Steve Niles, published by Dark Horse Books. Now, this is an actual book, I like text and words and stuff. Although
with words?
Dark Horse puts out comic books. So they have a series of these Cal McDonald comics. Mm-hmm. But these are the actual novelization. There you go. That's a word. Mm-hmm. 472 pages, so it's a long one. And there's a link in the show notes to pick this one up. Had you heard of Cal McDonald before this?
I think I had.
I can't say that I did, but I guess he's been around a long time.
I hadn't read any of it, but yeah.
No, neither have I. Well, this book is a complete anthology of the Cal McDonald stories, includes 2 new stories as well as an introduction by John Carpenter. And I love all the advertising and stuff for this book mentions the introduction by John Carpenter, and it's 3 short paragraphs that basically summarize the back of the book. I'd be willing to bet John Carpenter never even opened it. Do it himself? I'll bet he didn't even open the book. Yeah. I like Steve Niles. He's a good author. Cal McDonald is an important character. I liked it a lot.
Where's my $10,000?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess John Carpenter wrote it, but I would not buy this book for that.
It's not a deep, insightful commentary then.
It's he probably could have just swapped out the name and a couple of the names and used it as a form letter. Could you write me a letter of recommendation, please? Let me pull out my form letter. Wow. Okay, so Cal McDonald is a private investigator, and he starts out the book living in Washington, D.C., and then later on in a little later story, he moves to L.A. He's not just a normal PI, though. He recognizes the undead for what they really are, and they seem to be everywhere. Hey, check out your local post office. There's probably a couple of ghouls working there. They seem to like civil service jobs. Anyway, some of the supernaturals are friendly, like Cal's partner, Moloch, a really helpful but sometimes annoying ghoul. Together they solve crimes, at least in the few pages where Cal isn't strung out on drugs or passed out in the bathroom. It's tough being Cal, and he's a drunken drug addict, as well as a PI.
But functional.
Gotta block out the monsters some way. So it's a compilation of 13 stories revolving around Cal and Moloch and the weird underworld they inhabit. The first story, Savage Membrane, is the longest and, in my opinion, the best. Something is stealing people's brains.
Oh, yummy.
The following stories get shorter and shorter as the book progresses, and these are all from Peter Niles, who's probably best known for creating 30 Days of Night, the vampire story. I am mostly unfamiliar with his comics work, but apparently Cal McDonald has been on a lot of comic adventures before this compilation. And I liked it a lot more than I thought I would, but I have to admit the further it went on, the less interesting the stories became. It's almost as if the writer was just cranking out stories because his fans demanded it, not from the love of the character. Like Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes. Mm-hmm. I hate this. I wish it was over, but I got to keep writing them.
But you got to do it.
The first half of the book is really good, and since they're all just short stories, you can stop at any time. So yeah, overall, if you like urban fantasy or maybe supernatural mysteries, this is pretty cool.
I'll have to read it. I didn't read it. Fran read it.
Well, it's, I don't know if the stories are based on the comic books. Maybe there was some of those shorter stories relied a lot on the artwork. Mm-hmm. But yeah, some of the later ones, Just felt a little too short.
Oh, okay.
But the first couple I really liked. They were good. I would read more if there was more of it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
And that's our show for this week. Stop in over at horrorguys.com and read all these reviews. Sign up for the bonus reviews that you don't hear about here over at horrorbulletin.com.
Bonuses are nice.
And pick up our various books. We've got a monthly magazine that contains all our reviews, the ones from the podcast and the ones from the newsletter, and sometimes some others. And, of course, we've got some nonfiction books. We talk about Shock Theater, The Son of Shock, the Hammer horror movies, where you could figure out whatever that zombie movie that we couldn't think of. Yeah. And a whole bunch of others. Got Vincent Price, silent films, and one or two more that are going to be coming along real soon now.
Very cool.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.